So as we were looking at this, we're like, well, that's quite interesting. Well, let us look how many people are searching for jobs. Like, I mean, if people are searching for grants, surely they're searching for jobs. And to our dismay, it's almost 10 times less people searching for jobs than people searching to check whether or not they still qualify for a social grant, right?
Hello everyone, I've got Renier back with me. It's How Would You Build It? How are you doing, Renier?
I'm good, Bobby. Keen to get into it.
Yeah, let's get straight into it. Today's episode is going to be about kind of looking at the employment rates and looking at opportunities within kind of job placements or just the general kind of situation that we find ourselves in South Africa with unemployment rate. There's actually opportunity sitting within there. I mean, there's a sad story. I'm sitting here in stage 6 yet again, load shedding. It's not going away. It's not helping the numbers. But most importantly, there was a report that came out. It's the labor force survey that came out that kind of gave us some stats, some scary things coming through, but some interesting trends at the same time. I don't think they're surprising, but it definitely sheds light on kind of the general unemployment problem that South Africa has. What was your main takeaways when you looked at that report?
Yeah, I think, unemployment has been high for a long time, right? And I think as most South Africans, we've almost become insensitive to the fact that there's so many unemployed people. And it's steadily increasing, and for a long time we've heard there are a lot of people that have actually given up trying to find jobs, and that's one of the interesting things that we found in our newsletter. We're covering this topic this week, and one of the things we looked at is actually I was on Google Trends trying to look at some of the trends and what people are searching in South Africa, and there were these rising search terms that people were searching for in South Africa, and I saw SRD featuring up there, and I'm like, what is SRD? Right, so I go, let's search this thing, and it's the social relief grant that was disbursed or started getting disbursed in COVID, right? So remember, SASSA grants, for those who don't know, SASSA grants are for people who have children under a certain income level. I think it's if you earn less than 5,000 Rand a month as a household, then you qualify for a SASSA grant, which is, I think, a few hundred Rand a month, which is a grant you get from government. And then also, if you are retired and you don't have any income, you also get, I think it's 1,100 Rand a month, right? So the old grant system that we've all heard about, they're only for people with children, people with disabilities, and people for the elderly, right? So people that were unemployed got nothing. Like they had to find a job. But if the unemployment is at 30% plus, then there's a lot of people that have absolutely no income. So when COVID hit, government introduced this grant, which is 350 Rand a month, which goes to people that are South African that are unemployed, right? So if you have no income, then you get this 350 Rand. And I think there was talk, I don't know if they follow through, but there was talk that actually everyone gets it. So the entire country, even if you pay income tax, they'll discount it by 350 Rand a month. So everybody gets 350 Rand a month. And then they continued it post-COVID, right? But what was interesting is looking at the Google search trends, you see this massive rise in people searching if they still qualify for this grant, right? So they search for that term, they search for SASSA status, they search for SASSA, they search for SASSA status check. And apart from football scores happening in Europe and people searching for Hollywood bets and sports gambling, these search terms are right up there, right? So in South Africa, we search for sports scores, sports betting, and SASSA grants. That's where we are, people. Anyhow, so large volume. So as we were looking at this, we're like, well, that's quite interesting. Well, let us look how many people are searching for jobs. Like, I mean, if people are searching for grants, surely they're searching for jobs, and to our dismay, it's almost 10 times less people searching for jobs than people searching to check whether or not they still qualify for a social grant, right? So there's reason to believe that a lot of these people have completely given up trying to find a job. And also what was very interesting is Google actually gives you a nice breakdown per province, like where the most interest comes from. So they don't tell you exactly how many people are searching. It will tell you which province the most searches originate from. Now, the most searches for SASSA grants and checking if they're still eligible come from Limpopo. followed by Northwest and Mpumalanga, and then the Free State. By far the least searches for these grants is the Western Cape. I think 1/5 of the amount of searches in Limpopo, in the Western Cape searching for grants. And then if you look for job, the opposite is true. Like the most
it's inverse.
searches for jobs. In the Western Cape, like people are searching for jobs in the Western Cape. They're not searching for SASSA grants, whereas up north is a bit of a difference. So there's definitely a trend and a mood per province that shows that people don't believe that they actually can find a job, and they've resigned to that fact. And now they're simply looking to get can I get that grant?
Yeah,
Which is worrying. I mean, I don't know how you come back from that. How do you change the mood and get it going so that there are jobs? But there's definitely a great disparity between the provinces with regards to how they think about these things.
No, it's crazy. It's almost like a temperature check on the country when you talk about these kind of things. And I keep talking about my experience at Sweep South really kind of highlighted a lot of where the unemployment is and how bad the problem really is. We had offices in Durban, Joburg, Pretoria, Western Cape, Cape Town, obviously. And we saw all these kind of trends actually existed. What was scary was when we did KZN, people with degrees finishing university were trying to get a job as a domestic cleaner, which was mind-boggling for me. Yeah. I mean, okay, this subject, I think we could go on for days, but Renier, I got another scary story. When I came back, I lived overseas for a little while, came back, and I was working I was helping, being Portuguese, we had a shop. So I helped my folks for a few months while I was getting my feet back on the ground. And there was this lady that was working with us. And she asked me, I think I was about 23 at the time. She's like, so how many kids have you got? And I was like, no, I'm 23. I don't have any kids. She couldn't believe it. So there's like this theory, or not a theory, there's this like mindset of like having children early because you actually get paid by the government to have kids. So it's like it's actually a way that they see a way to get money. It's mind-boggling. It's actually mind-boggling that there's this kind of thinking that like, I can't get money, I can't get work, but if I have children, the government's going to give me money. There's stories of how people are actually like wanting to adopt children because if they adopted the children, they'd get more money from, and I'm not lying. These are people, I've worked with them on the ground where they actually want to adopt people so that they can qualify for more grant money. It's very scary. And it just kind of tells you that like, that's how bad the market is. And I think just to finish, okay, not to finish, but to like kind of just say like, how do we grow this economy? I always think about like the tech industry, but I mean, it's like at the ground level, there's a lot of jobs that need to be created to get people to kind of change their mood, change their outlook, and realize that there is work out there. And we're going to be talking about the kind of opportunities, the kind of companies that are out there that are trying to help solve the problem. But at the end of the day, it's like, how do we solve that lower layer of unemployment and changing the shift to say, let's figure out how to make jobs. I think that's the key. Is how do we make jobs?
Yeah, I think this is obviously a very complex problem, and there's a lot of different things involved. But I do want to say, and this is why I think it's important to talk about it, right? It's not because it's, obviously it's bad, and we go, oh, this is a big problem. But that's really the thing, right? Entrepreneurs, hustlers, startups, what are they about? They're about solving big problems, right? And I think if there is ever a big problem to solve, perhaps at the same magnitude of load shedding, if there's a big problem to solve in this country, is how do we get more people employed, right?
100%.
So I was reminded by this, and one of the reasons we're talking about it is I got an email from LinkedIn recently who suggested that I follow some of the top creators in South Africa, right? So I scrolled through the list and I don't really recognize anyone, but there was this glaring amount of followers that just hit me. There were two people. The one person had 250 odd thousand followers and the other person 100,000, and I never even heard of them in my life. They're not famous on LinkedIn. They're not famous people. And all the other people on the list is like 5,000, 800, 8,000, 10,000, and most people I know that do well on LinkedIn are like under the 10,000s, right? So I'm like, why do these people have 250,000 followers? So I go on their profiles, check it out. Both of them actually talk about jobs, getting a job, writing a good CV, posting vacancies, etc. And then it just struck me that here are two creators, and there are probably many more, They are just looking at this going, you know what, here's an opportunity. Like if I can help people
Mm-hmm.
get their jobs, there's an opportunity to create, if anything, maybe not even make money out of it, but to create an audience, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would love for the fact if they were to monetize that, and I would love it for them if they could monetize that and get money from actually helping people get jobs, because I think they should make money from it. But that made me think, you know what, maybe there's a bigger opportunity here. Like if people really get on this and go, you know what, we can't create jobs out of thin air, but we can help people find jobs that are already there, right? And I think that's probably a good start, right? Because one person earning a proper income, building a career, can result in that person being able to send their kids to, through school, or just give them better opportunities, which could result in a next generation being one step closer to eliminating this problem. So, perhaps we've been trying to take giant leaps when small steps would have get the job done.
Well, I love that.
And that's what that's what really sparked my interest, is to say, let's try and find jobs for people that are looking, and based on the jobs that are there, because there are jobs. I mean, if you go to all of these corporate websites, all of them are hiring. It's not, maybe they're hiring, but slower than before, but they're still hiring. So how do we get people to find those opportunities and capitalize on them? Like, be prepared for a good interview, like have a proper CV, like be trained to be good at the specific job. Like, I think there's a lot in that.
No, I agree. The thing is, like, in previous jobs, even, in the tech industry, you would get some really horrible CVs. They might have the experience, but the CVs were bad. So, you know what? It doesn't have to just be lower end. It could be any end. It could be all over the place. Just help people kind of, figure out how to sell themselves and like get that opportunity to get through the door so they can start that learning curve. But I agree with you. I was going to read an excerpt out of The Shoe Dog, which is the Nike story, Phil Knight, his book. Very good book. And he kind of explains his story about how he started Nike. In the 60s, he had finished varsity, and he had this dream of starting a shoe company. He believed that, he could sell shoes, and he made relationships in Japan at the time. You must remember that in the 60s, there was still a lot of fresh hatred between the Japanese and the Americans after the Second World War. But he strongly believed that he could do this, right? And he did. And he sparked up relationships with Japan. And over the years, he kind of realized how to outsource, build, making shoes in factories around the world. Anyways, at the end of the book, he kind of talks about his learnings overall. Now that he's like in his 70s and he's retired and he's looking back at his story, he talks about what he believes will change countries and change poverty. And he says it's low-end jobs, and a lot of them. And I think that is so key. And he's not trying to be a politician. He's literally saying, this is what I experienced in many countries, Vietnam, Mexico, Peru, he names them. And that's what I love about what Sweep South's doing, because I know we wanted to talk about, kind of how we solved, what kind of app out there, what kind of, product can we build that can solve that. And I think, Sweep South have been trying to do this now for about 7-8 years, and they've got a great product kind of feature set. And I think, COVID hit them hard, unfortunately, but there's a great opportunity. It's electricians now, it's plumbers, it's not just domestic workers, they've got gardeners, and they're really looking at those like kind of household jobs that we could fill in South Africa. And I think that's a good start too.
Yeah, and I think if you take it back like generations, right? And like, let's go back, 10 generations, fathers. They also, people were poor back then, like everyone. It wasn't some people grew up privileged and others not. Everybody was poor. And the only way to get anywhere was to start an entry-level job, right? And you did that for your entire life, and you pass it on, and the next person would be one step further. Now, I'm not saying that's exactly the route that we should take, where some people can take a few steps forward because of how the world has changed. Let's do that, right? Great, awesome. But the reality is, I think there's a lot of opportunity to get people in the job market. There's a wonderful saying. There was a guy, Stefan van der Maal, a good friend of mine. He ran Hillsong Africa Foundation, which is a non-profit organization in Cape Town and across South Africa, and they had a program where they helped young people get digital skills in order to work. And they always said, get a job, ABC, a job, better job, career. Right. So start with a job, then get a better job.
Love that.
And then eventually we get to a career. And I think that should really be the approach, and I think there's a lot of opportunity in that space. So I think if you were to build a startup that focuses on trying to find people jobs, what would you do, Bobby?
Well, this is the thing. I actually wanted to bring it. We're talking about low end stuff, but when I think about the problem, I think that there are different layers, right? And that's what I love about your ABC right now. Is get a job, just get anything that gets you experience. I remember when I first started out, like studying days, I had he was a neighbor. And he's like, just go to a company, knock on their door and ask them if you can make them coffee. He was like, you've got to get yourself out there. Get a driver's license. You can become a driver, right? Get a job. So I love that. So you can kind of look at those starting points. And I think that a lot of people are there as well. For me, there's the graduate space. So, and I see there's the Joboxes of the world. There's what's the other one you shared? JobJack. Yeah. JobJack, they kind of look at those graduates that are coming out, so freshly out of varsity and now looking for jobs. I interviewed Rebecca Cameron last year on my podcast, and she kind of had this intern program that she was doing. So kind of helping these people get internships into companies to kind of help them there. So there's already a couple of opportunities. But what's scarier in is for me is where I also want to dive in. I am actually got a POC running at the moment. But for me, there's also what I label the lost generation. So it's people that kind of are, they didn't go to varsity, they didn't learn a certain skill at varsity, whatever it is like that. Very smart, intelligent people, but didn't understand where the breaks were and how to exploit them. So I believe in the lost generation. And I think that there is definitely an opportunity in trying to empower these people that have a good foundation of education, but only realize that there was, where the opportunities were later on in their life, and they don't know how to exploit it or what they need to do to get there. So, that's the kind of spaces I feel there are opportunity. And we've spoken about OfferZen. So there is room for recruitment as a business within this ecosystem.
Yeah. And I guess, with all the technology around, one could easily launch this without fancy websites, fancy web apps, right? You can easily slap something together that meets the people where they're at.
Exactly. Well, we spoke about what Mindjoy are doing, right? She didn't build a big platform. She's like, cool, let's get some classes going, test it and iterate on that. And I think there's the same kind of concept.
Look, and I've seen it with JobJack, right? So JobJack is a bit of a different focus. They're not focused on graduates. They actually started out trying to get gig jobs for students at studies, right? Okay. So, come mow my lawn, come do this. And then quickly realized that, there's some challenges with that business. One being you lose your customer or your supplier every few years when they graduate. And, there's the margins are small, doesn't scale well. They eventually then got the opportunity to hire some blue-collar workers for organization, and has since shifted the focus towards that. They're growing incredibly. I think the last time I checked, they were over 35 employees. Sure. They're doing really well. They've got a lot of, think about tellers at ShopRite. That's perfect for them. So the turnover of those staff is quite high. So they're constantly hiring people in that space. So they've really streamlined the sourcing, selecting, and recruiting process for these corporates, and made it really easy for people to apply and for the corporates to find better candidates. And they've also built a business model that actually works specifically in this space. Now, white-collar workers, we've all seen these models. They typically like percentage on whatever the salary is. It's quite an expensive solution. But what they've done is they focus more on let's do a subscription model. How many people are you hiring for, and we help you find those candidates and place them. So much more alignment between what the company is trying to do, what they are trying to do as a company, and then the people trying to find jobs. They've got this hashtag that they use on LinkedIn called, which they say, employ the world. And that's really their mission. They want to help the world find employment. And they're a wonderful team, and I think they're definitely a team to watch out for. And I'm surprised to not see many other people playing in that space. I think there's way more opportunity than simply one company can handle. So I'm from JobJack. I'm sorry to encourage people to become competitors, but I think it would be good for everyone in this country if we get more people employed. But I thought it was quite clever, focusing on that market segment. Once again, it's so typical. when you think about starting a recruitment business, you think about the flashy stuff. You think about like, let's build something like OfferZone. It's really cool. I've got cool shirts. We're going to place developers, do all of that stuff. Blue collar workers isn't flashy, but hey, there are millions of them. Like there are millions of those job opportunities, and the opportunity to build a business in that space is just as lucrative, maybe even more lucrative. And often it's in the most seemingly uninteresting places that you find the greatest opportunity. And I think recruitment at this lower, or placing of candidates at this lower spectrum of income is probably one of those areas that's very lucrative.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how we always kind of veer towards the tech industry, but I mean, there's many probably other things that one could do outside of tech. But I think there's another topic or another theme that sticks in my head, and it's not always just about these new workers. It's about current workers. How do we retain staff? I mean, think about, we've discussed it and we've discussed it offline. It's just like, the power of having somebody work for you longer, the benefit of being able to do that, right? So for a company to have somebody that's sticks around for a while, if you hire an intern, I spoke about an intern, they come in, they get their badges and they thank you very much, and they're out the door within 2 years, and you're like, gosh, I have to retrain someone. What are the opportunities in the space of actually retaining people? So if you retain it, your business does better, you kind of grow and you can build on that. I mean, what we're trying to do is kind of build an economy here, so I feel like there's an opportunity there. It's not just finding new people, but how do you retain what you've got already? I've interviewed, for example, Quibus Lowe, who does Digemy, and they are, how do we train? He's got an app to train the employees, like reinforced learning. So every day they get like a quiz or something that they have to do that helps them within sales, whatever within their company. And I think there's a cool idea as well. It's just a different part of the market that kind of will help break this unemployment problem.
No, absolutely. And but for me, it's that one. We see these solutions like Strove, which I think is really creative. They've got this employee wellness platform that offers benefits for employees. You might think it's because of the benefits that people want to stay at the company. I actually think it's because of the community aspect that originates, a sense of community that could originate from work, because now you do stuff outside of work with colleagues, right? So if you and I work together and we can mountain bike together, and Strove encouraged us to do it, now there's this community aspect. So you see those kind of solutions, and I think they're smart. And beyond that, you have the likes of Ollie Health doing mental health credits and all kinds of courses to make sure your employees are in the right mind space. I think those things contribute. Ultimately, good leadership is what keeps people in organizations, right? And as a country, this level of leadership, this culture of leadership has gone away since the days of Nelson Mandela, I suppose. There are amazing leaders out there, but it's I would love to see more leaders step up and go, this is what we're building, this is the vision, let's go. And speaking out against things which they believe are not good for the people, and stepping into those situations and leading those organizations. Then they will see staff retention. On the other side, perhaps we're just living in a world where people work in a place for 2 years and move on. I see it in the tech industry. If I look at CVs, they're typically like 2 years spaced out, right? Every 2 years, people leave and they go work elsewhere. And that's maybe just the nature of it. And perhaps the next stage of this is the gig economy, where we have more people working, a few smaller projects, few smaller operations, and maybe have one business on the side and doing some other things, and seeing more and more of that. Creator economy fits in that. There's another recruitment platform which is fascinating. It's called Recruit My Mom. They've actually launched a white label version of that called Recruit My Graduate.
No way.
And the
That's
idea
awesome.
originated a few years ago. It originated when they said, some people want to work a few hours a day. So we've got a mom. She's highly qualified, highly experienced, but she wants to be at the netball games and at the rugby games in the afternoon, and she wants to drive around and do different things, but she still wants to apply herself professionally 4 hours a day. How do you do that, right? So they started doing this, and the results have been amazing. The people who have used it absolutely loved it. if people know they only have 4 hours to make an impact, they make sure those 4 hours count.
Mm.
Where a lot of people that are employed full time, tend to slack off a few hours, or chat a bit longer at the water cooler. Where a mom that has to do a school run at 12 goes, I need to go. Like, I need to get work done. I don't have time to waste.
Yeah.
So the value for money is often substantially higher. And it often makes a lot of sense because it fits into certain specific roles that only requires 20 hours a week.
Mm.
So I do see the world heading more that way. What could be interesting is there's a lot of people campaigning for this 4-day work week.
Right.
I'm not convinced that's the way to go. But what I do think would be interesting is for corporates to explore, well, how do I expose my employees to things outside of this corporate environment that can sometimes become an echo chamber, right? So everybody sitting at a large corporate goes, this is a great idea. People will love this because of the politics, the dynamics, the setup, everything that goes into working in any corporates, not the specific ones. It just means that these echo chambers result, and then they go, this is a good idea, and they spend millions and run in a direction. If people in that team were to spend 2 days a week outside of that organization, let's say working on a startup. I know Innovation City has these programs where corporates come and they work there for a day or two a week and work on specific startup concepts that they're launching outside of the corporate, which I think is a great idea.
That's awesome. I didn't know that.
But if they were to do that, then they'll get stimulation from the outside and see other things, speak to other people, hear other ideas. And ideas spark ideas. We can talk about, that's what we're doing, right? You might not be interested in unemployment and jobs and all the stuff we're talking about, but as we share these different things, ideas for other stuff you're doing in your work and other stuff that you're involved in. And I think that's the beauty of it. If we can get people to work shorter stints on smaller projects in different places, and the corporates can figure out how to make that work legally, right? Because we've got NDAs and competitors and all kinds of complicated things. If they can figure out how to do that properly, I think there's opportunity. So I think there is an opportunity as well. If we want to do one like white collar thing, a platform that allows corporates to do more of these things. How can corporates employ someone for 3 days a week, get a lot of value out of them, and the 2 other days they work on innovation projects or on things that could take the organization forward, but in a different, maybe non-traditional way. I think there's a massive opportunity.
Yeah, I think a big thing to make this work is the gig economy, right? I mean, if you think about a couple of years ago when Uber came onto the scene, everyone was talking about the gig economy, and it has. We've got the Fivers of the world, these platforms, kind of a marketplace where people can put themselves and give their skills, to the market and say, okay, cool, I can do a logo for you, I can do all these kind of things and charge accordingly. But I think regulation is the problem there. There's a lot that needs to get done to make this viable within the country, but there's another opportunity is how do we exploit the gig economy? I think there was in that stats of that report you gave also kind of spoke about the people that work part-time, like how do we do that? Because I know in South Africa with the labor laws, it's very difficult, to hire someone and then let them go, right? So people are a bit scared to actually hire them because they're scared that it might not work out. What if the business doesn't do well? Now you're stuck and you have to retrench or whatever it is. But now let's actually look at how can we exploit the gig economy and allow people that kind of independent contract that allows them to work for that limited time and get paid for that limited time, risks down on each side. I mean, lots of opportunity there as well, I reckon.
Really interesting. I mean, think about a graphic designer job, right? Let's say that person or a job in that space could earn 30,000 rand, right? If you split that job into 3, you can create 3 jobs of 10,000. Now the question is, can they deliver on the same quality?
Yeah.
Well,
this is your process coming.
Perhaps not. But
if you've got good processes as a company, you can exploit that maybe. Sorry, internet seems a bit funny.
Yes, and all of a sudden we get more people employed. Now, the other day in the newsletter, we also covered I think 96% of people earn less than R1 million a year, right? So, if you take those top tier jobs and you break them down into smaller ones,
there we go.
Salary of 10,000 rand is a lot of money for a lot of people. That's a very interesting thing. So platforms that do that, platforms that expose that, that's something that I would explore to build, that's for sure.
What's another thing, Renier, is actually there was I know of companies that kind of Now, I wish that the government, again, talking about regulations, would allow people from overseas to come work here. So if you take, I think Portugal's doing it. I know Bali does it, for example. Since we went remote, it's actually opening up. I think there's even talk of South Africa doing it, where they have a working visa, a remote working visa. So you can actually come and work in the country remotely, and you can come do it here in South Africa. Now, imagine so put it this way. I know that there are graduates from Holland and whatever it is, I think you've even spoken about it, that need to get work experience to get their degree, right? So that you actually open up and say, okay, cool, let's get these guys in for a little while, bringing people into the company like for a couple of months from overseas, kind of doing recruitment from overseas into in. I don't know if that'll help the unemployment rate, but at least it's kind of, there's another opportunity of creating a platform where you can get the skills to kind of help build, to maybe build in you can come in, but you need to train. I don't know, but like, how can they give back by hiring in?
So there was a study a few years ago that actually said like one, a high income job creates 5 more jobs, right? So through various means, like one is tax revenue.
Exactly.
And the other one is actually hiring a domestic, buying from shops that then, the amount of money they make from those shops then add up to being able to hire another person. So there's a big case to say, let's get more high-paying people to come to South Africa.
Exactly.
Because those people, the value they contribute to the economy would result in being able to employ more people down the line.
Yeah, exactly. Let's not forget that they don't just come and sit at home. They go to restaurants, they go travel, they kind of boost the tourism industry while they're actually working here.
No, they hire people.
Yeah, exactly. So there's lots of opportunities there. I think we're only touching the surface here of what can be done. I know we kind of touched mostly on recruitment, but yeah, there's probably other things that we could do. But any last takeaways around this kind of topic of finding opportunities within the employment and I hate to bring it, but recruitment?
Yeah, well, here's the thing, right? I think it's just such a negative topic that people tend to avoid it altogether, right? And if we put that aside and say, hey, let's look at the opportunity, like what can we do? How can we solve this problem? I think there's massive opportunity to not only make a good impact, but also make good money and build an amazing business. So if I were to build it, I'll start there, try and understand this problem a bit better, get into the thick of things and see if one can put something together that adds value to people that are job seeking.
Yeah, well, we know, as from the LinkedIn little study that you did, that it's definitely works. People want to know, people want to get jobs, and so there's definitely a need for it. So, yeah, for anyone that's gotten to this point in the podcast, tell us about anything that you've done in the space. We'd love to hear about it, and maybe we'll talk more about it in further episodes. But Renier, always great having you on, and thank you so much. And we'll see you next week.
Thanks, man. All the best.
Cool,
Ciao.
man.